So I will work with a complex smooth projective algebraic directive. And then I fix some integer k. And inside xk, there are natural cycles. So I fix a point. It will be a reference point in x. So there are so-called the big diagonals, PIG per star of the diagonal. So PIG is a projection from xk to x squared. And of course, you can also consider pi per star of the point O. So what I write PIG per star, that means the inverse image. So it's a language of cycles. If the inverse image does not have the right dimension, you have to make a correction. That's why we use this. But it's just the inverse image. There are the big diagonals. And the question I want to consider is what are the polynomial relations between these cycles. And of course, to explain the question, I have to say in which set of in which algebra of cycles I will consider this polynomial relation. Cycles they are just they are algebraic cycles, and so the I of any algebraic varieties. This is so I work with a Q coefficient, so it's a Q vector space generated by codimension I algebraic subvarieties. By algebraic subvarieties, of course, I do not ask that the subvariety is smooth, so it's a closed algebraic subset, but I want this to be irreducible. Now, these spaces of cycles are good, but there is no intersection theory on them because, of course, you cannot, if you intersect a cycle with itself, there is a problem. It's a non-proper intersection. So in order to compute, to do intersection theory, we need to model out these species of cycles by some relations. So there are three. Usually there are three interesting such equivalence relations. So first of all, we can consider the I, so modulo homological equivalence. Okay, so we just say that so that is you quotient this cycle space by those cycles which are homologous to 0, and so then of course the result will inject into cohomology of degree 2I. Okay. So as I'm considering only Q coefficients, I will be here. And then, so of course, here, if I consider the problem in cohomology, the question can be asked for any topological space or any smooth manifold if I want to have more results. Okay. But in algebraic geometry, there are other very important and very interesting finer equivalence relations. We can consider the group CHI of x to the k, which is defined as the quotient of the I of x by the subgroup of cycles which are rationally equivalent to 0. And also there is another one, which is interesting to consider, which is cycles modulo algebraic equivalent. Okay. So let me just say in 1 minute how they are defined. So the group, the subgroup of cycles algebraically equivalent to 0. So it's a Q vector space generated by as follows. So you consider you consider any curve. So C will be a smooth projective connected curve. And you can consider, so here let me put any y. Okay. Now you consider in a C cross y, you consider any codimension I cycle. Okay. So the dominating C, or all components are dominating C. Okay, by the first projection. And we consider now any 2 points T prime in C. And you will say that you consider the difference of the 2 fibers. So clearly, the gamma T and the gamma T prime, they can be deformed one to each other along this curve. And then we will say that they are algebraically equivalent. And finally, we will generate that group in this way. So this is the algebraic equivalent. And for the rational equivalence, the rational equivalence, it is defined similarly. But instead of considering any smooth projective curve, you consider only P1s here. So of course, this is a very big difference. What is obvious from this definition is that you have something like this, CHI of y to CHI of y modulo algebraic equivalence. And well, very clearly the cycle map, which is defined here, factorized to sorry, it's here it's modulo algebraic equivalent. Okay. And the cycle class also factors here, so you have something like this. Here these groups they are not so big. Simply by definition, they are countable. But it is known since by work of Griffiths and Clements Griffiths that it might be very big, much bigger than what we get in cohomology. It can be, of course, so non-zero by Griffiths and even infinitely generated by a result of Clements. And this one is usually enormous. I mean, enormous, I mean, not only it can have the size of an algebraic variety, as it is the case, for example, for 0 cycles on a curve, but it can be much bigger, namely it can have the size of an infinite dimensional algebraic variety. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I come back to this question. So now I explain the meaning of this. So that means that I will compute in either of these groups. I will consider particularly the so-called modified diagonals. Essentially, so of course in x to the I, you have the small diagonals. delta I, okay, where all points coincide. Okay? And very clearly, the small diagonal is an intersection of big diagonals like this. Just, well. So certainly you can write it, but not in a unique way, as a polynomials in the big diagonals, PIG upper star delta x. And then what we do is that in xk, we consider something which looks like, first of all, it's a modification of the small diagonal. So we do something like this. Here all the points are equal. And then you will do well, minus O. Here you put all equal points. So okay. So and then you, of course, you apply permutations. So you put the O at any possible position. Okay. Then you continue plus O x. Here you put x, etc. Well, so maybe it's not completely clear. So the precise formula is that your delta k is so the sum over all I contained in 1 to k, and maybe you want that I is not empty. Here you write your set from 1 to k as the disjoint union of I and J. Okay, and I will be so that G will be the cardinality of G, and then you do here pi upper star of the small diagonal of xi. And here you put Pg upper star of just the point O. Okay, this is the formula. So for example, if you consider, well, so I should give a name to this. So it's gamma k of x, and because it may depend on O, I put O like this. So for example, the gamma 2 of x O is just the diagonal. So it's something which is in x2. So it is the diagonal minus O cross x minus x cross O. And well, it's an obvious fact that it is 0 in any of these groups, okay? If and only if x is P1, well, assuming, of course, the dimension of x is positive. Okay. So there is maybe another way to, and then, no. Then there is another, maybe more convenient way to understand this cycle. Maybe the definition may look a bit arbitrary here. So instead of x to the k, you consider x to the k plus 1. Okay. And in xk plus 1, well, it will be indexed by the factors will be indexed by 0 to k, and you consider gamma k of x O. No, sorry, gamma k1 or gamma 1k. Okay, that will be defined as so you take the product in your algebra of cycles of P0I. So okay, consider the pullbacks of the diagonals, minus pi upper star O. Okay. And then so of course, this is a cycle which has the dimension, same dimension as x, and you push it forward to x to the k. So of course, by now I push it. So I have these various projections, and I project to the last k factors. Okay. So the lower star just means that I push the cycles. So when so not only you have this obvious formula, but it's easy to see that the vanishing of this cycle, so it's a lemma, completely formal. The vanishing of the cycle of the modified diagonal, it's the same. It's equivalent to for any of these cycle theory. It's equivalent to the vanishing of the cycles, so gamma 1k of x. Oh. Okay. So, and now, well, this cycle is more obvious why it is interesting. In fact, if you consider the delta x minus x cross O, which is essentially this cycles which appear here. So it's a P0 upper star, P0I upper star of this cycle. It's exactly this one. It's interesting because in terms of motifs, if you like, it's a projector. For example, so that is it's a projector in the sense that it's self-intersection. So we have a composition of self-correspondence, and satisfies this condition. And it's a projector on, for example, in cohomology, it's a projector on the cohomology of a positive degree of x. Okay. So finally, that's why these cycles are important from the motivic point of view, for example. Okay, so now I am going to explain what are the what is well, partial answer to the question here in cohomology first. So maybe. So well, so there are relations, and in fact, so they mean polynomial relations involving only these cycles. And there are three main sources of relations. One is the following fact. It's a proposition which is due to Grady. It says that the cycle gamma m of xO. Now I consider cohomology classes. This map here, the cycle class map from cycles to cohomology. I will denote it between brackets. So the cohomology class of this cycle is 0 if and only if m is greater than n plus d, and n is the dimension of x, and d it's so-called the Albanese dimension of x. If you like, so you have this Albanese map from x to the Albanese variety of x. So it's maximal complex torus, which such that there is a holomorphic map from X to this complex torus, which generate it, something like this. So the Albanese dimension, it's by definition, it's the dimension of this Albanese map, the dimension of the image of this Albanese map. Okay, so that gives you a way of computing some vanishing, and as I mentioned, these vanishing, these relations, we can see them as a polynomial relations between the big diagonal. So this is the first source of relation. The second source of relations, what I will call trivial relations. There are of several kinds. For example, the O intersected with itself, it's 0. Well, if the dimension of X is okay. So this is when you if you pull back these relations to powers of X, that gives you stupid relations. Also, for example, now so this is in X, of course, and then we can then pull back to higher powers. Also, now in X2, you have the obvious relation that if you consider P1 upper star O intersected with the diagonal, well, it's just the point OO, so it's the same as P1 upper star O dot P2 upper star O. Yeah. So it's nothing deep. I mean, this is what I call them trivial, but of course one has to list them. And another one, for example, is that now it's in X3. It's clear that P12 upper star of the diagonal, so dot P23 upper star of the diagonal. It's a small diagonal, the 3 points go inside, but you can write it in another way, namely, for example, P13 upper star delta X dot P23 upper star delta X. So that gives another uninteresting relation. So I'm not sure the list is complete, but it is what I call a trivial relation. I mean, they are true, of course, not only in cohomology, but in any of these cycle theory. Okay, and the last is by far the most interesting. Is what I will call the Kimura relation. So now I assume that the X has no odd degree cohomology. Okay. I can explain why I do this, but it's a technical point. So let's assume this. And then the Kimura relation, so let n be the dimension of the whole cohomology algebra of X. Okay. And the Kimura relation, it is the geometric translation of the fact that wedge n plus 1, the exterior power, this is 0. Okay, so now how we can translate it into a relation like this? This is as follows. So now you can see this space as a quotient of the tensor. Okay. Of the tensor of this tensor powers of. No, sorry, it's not this. Consider the cohomology of X, tensor n plus 1, and the skew part here, it's an image. So you can see this as a quotient of this. Okay. And this is defined as the image of a projector. In fact, it's not a projector, but a multiple of a projector. Let's call it pi sharp, which does the following. So you take something in this tensor product, then obviously the symmetric group acts on this. And you can do simply the alternate sum over all the permutation. Here I put the sign of the permutation, and here I put sigma upper star of alpha. So the sigma upper star, well, it's obvious. Here you have a tensor, an element in the tensor product, like this. And the sigma, it will send it to alpha sigma of 1. Maybe let me put sigma lower star. Okay. This is simply the action of this action here. Okay, and now we can interpret this geometrically. By saying that simply by QNet, this tensor product it's naturally isomorphic to the cohomology of x to the n. Okay. And the important point is exactly why I need this assumption. The fact that the sigma n action, the symmetric group action here, is also induced by the obvious symmetric group action on the x to the n itself. If there is some odd degree cohomology, this is not an isomorphism of representation. There may be signs related to, well, I don't want to enter too much in the details. And so now in x to the n, you have an obvious cycle. Oh, sorry. So you get a cycle. Let's call it gamma sharp, which is the sum over all elements of the symmetric group of epsilon of sigma times gamma sigma, and gamma sigma is the graph of the permutation sigma. And so we see that finally you can interpret the fact that this is 0. Okay. This is equivalent, of course, to saying that this projector here is 0. But this projector, you can see this is exactly the action of this cycle. So this cycle has a cohomology class. And I'm just saying that the action of this cohomology class, it is exactly pi sharp. Okay. And finally, this is equivalent by Poincare duality or things like that to the fact that you have this vanishing. And now, very clearly, this gamma sharp, it is you can write it as a polynomial in the diagonal. So it's very easy to see, and that gives you a relation. And so we have a natural relation in cohomology, and it's I mean, a fundamental question whether So really very important because it will solve many, most big open problems in the theory of algebraic cycles if we knew that this relation gamma dièse equal to 0 hold in CH xn plus 1. So it's not xn, it's xn plus 1 here. Okay. So this question was essentially asked by Kimura, and he proved that if we knew the answer, if we had a positive answer, that would imply most of the important conjectures of a Bloch-Billingson tape on algebraic cycles. Okay. And now there is the following very interesting result, which is purely algebraic. I mean, algebraic in the sense that, well, there is no geometry. So now, so X is X is a smooth projective surface. Well, for a complex surface, of course. Well, for curves, there is not much to say about a cohomological question. And for surfaces, instead, there is this result. So this is a result which is due to Yin, Qizheng Yin, student of Ben Moonen. And he says that for such an X, the relations, so the cohomological polynomial relations between the diagonals, the big diagonals, so Pij upper star delta X. So in cohomology, so are generated by the trivial relations. So what I call 2 before, and the Kimura relation. So, so that says that really the Kimura relation is the one which should be studied. Also, that this is, of course, a very hard point, as I mentioned. Okay, so now I want to continue and to show you what happens with a finer equivalence relation. And the situation is completely different. So there is this O'Grady result. Okay, so in particular, so O'Grady, it says that if X is either a surface, so a surface with B1 equal to 0, so this is equivalent to saying that the number D, which is in this formula, is a 0. So, and of course, n equal to, or a curve, a smooth projective curve, then gamma 3 of X is 0 in cohomology. And now we are going to see that if we consider these problems modulo algebraic equivalence or rational equivalence, things are completely different. So So let me state some vanishing, sorry, and non-vanishing, or maybe non-vanishing results. Results. Okay. So the first, so now, of course, a modulo algebraic or rational equivalence. So the first result was due to Gross and Schoen, who maybe were the first to consider these modified diagonals. So it's in the 90s. It says that if X is a hyperelliptic curve, so that means so it's a two-sheeted cover of P1. Then the cycle gamma 3 of X and the point O is chosen to be a Weierstrass point. That is one of the ramification points of this map. Then this cycle is 0 in CH of X3. And so this has been later on generalized by Colombo and Van Gemmen. This is a generalization to D-sheeted covers. So now your Riemann surface or projective curve is a D-sheeted cover of the projective line. Then they prove that now take any point okay, for simplicity. Of course, I should have insisted on the fact that the cycle, the modified diagonals, they depend on the reference point if you work on modulo rational equivalence, because when you change the point O, in general, you change its rational equivalence class. But that does not happen for cycles modulo algebraic equivalence, because obviously all the points are algebraically equivalent. So now if I do not want to take care of this dependence, I work modulo algebraic equivalence. And this is what they do. Now I choose any point, and they get that this gamma d plus 1 of xo is 0 in ch of xd plus 1, and now it's a modulo algebraic equivalence. Okay. And the higher dimensional generalization of this is the following result, which was so the theorem. So it's so in fact it answers for d equal to a question by O'Grady, conjecture by O'Grady. Okay, so no, it was solved. So and to generalize this, it to higher degree, and it says that now let y be smooth projective. Assume that So I choose any point. But that's, I consider modulo algebraic equivalence, so the choice of point is not important. Assume that gamma m of y O is equal to 0. Now I consider an X which admits degree D finite map to Y. Then, so it's in CH of y to the m modulo algebraic equivalence. Then gamma d m minus 1 plus 1 of x o is equal to 0 in CH of x d m minus 1 plus 1 modulo algebraic equivalence. Here again, I choose any point. This is not important. Of course, one has to, everything has to be connected. So, for example, the case of the Gross-Schoen theorem or the Colombo-Van Gemmen theorem, this was the case where y is P1. So you get exactly Gross-Schoen and Colombo-Van Gemmen. Simply because the y for P1, it's what I said at the beginning, it satisfies that gamma 2 is 0, so in that case the m is 2, and in fact here you get, in that case, gamma d plus 1, which is exactly this here. I just want to say one thing about very small thing about the proof. The proof is very easy. I mean, it's very explicit. And finally, it depends only on the following argument, observation. So the reason for this vanishing is this. Simply inside your x, in x to the k, you can consider the fiber product of x over y. So consider what I call, say, sigma k. By definition, it's x cross y. Okay, so it's a fiber product. But the fiber product, it's not connected because it has many components which are just diagonals. And you remove, well, something like this. So you remove from this fiber product all the obvious components, which are the diagonals xi equal to xg. Okay, so that gives you a certain cycle that you can more or less you can try to compute. And the observation is simply that sigma d plus 1 is 0. I mean, it's simply because here you consider the set of k points which have the same image over y and which have all to be distinct. Of course, if k is, because the morphism is of degree d, you cannot have more than d points which are distinct. Okay, and finally, this is exactly this relation which gives this one. Okay, so yes, and I also, well, these are vanishing results, and for non-vanishing results, which so non-vanishing. Already for curves, we see them, and also modulo algebraic equivalent. For example, by a result by Cereza. So it's a kind of counterpart to the Gauss-Schoen theorem, and also independently by Bruno Harris, for a very general curve of genus G at least 3, the cycle gamma 3 of XO is not algebraically equivalent to 0. Okay. So this is proved by a method of Hodge theory. There are several methods to prove this. This was initiated by Griffiths in that case. Later on, there have been results by Fakhruddin for the gamma 4. Then, of course, you have to go, I think, at least for G equal to 11. And by myself, so I proved that now you have to assume that G is greater than or equal to d squared over 2. So about this, what we want is just the genus of a plane curve of degree d, so it's something like that. And again, X is a very general curve of genus G satisfying this condition. Okay. Then gamma d plus 1 of X O is non-zero in CH X d plus 1 modulo algebraic equivalence. So this is proved by also by infinitesimal methods of infinitesimal variation of Hodge structures, and how to do some. Well, I state the result for one curve, which has to be very general. In fact, it's more a result about you spread everything. So you have the family of all curves, a universal family of curves over MG, and you can consider over that. You can consider the universal self-product, say of degree of the adequate degree. Inside this, you have a universal cycle. I mean, you spread everything, and you get a cycle which is defined in a relative way. And the result concerns the cohomology class of that cycle. And when you have a result on this cohomology class, and this is complicated because it lies in a very deep level of the Leray filtration. So that makes it hard to analyze it. So in any case, you see by this result that for a very general curve, the vanishing result we have in cohomology, the vanishing result in cohomology, it was just this vanishing. It is very different from what we get in modulo algebraic equivalence. Okay, and so to conclude, I would like to show to explain a result, which is very strange to me because it is proved, but I don't understand really why it is true. So this concerns the case of K3 surfaces. So now, so S is a K3 surface. Of course, I consider a projective K3 surface. Okay, so let me call it S. So that are the only projective surface with surfaces with a trivial canonical bundle. Okay, and let's say I want to have let's say assume by one of S is 0. It's trivial. Okay, so and now the first result we had was due to Beauville and myself. about 10 years ago. So there exists a canonical zero cycle. So again, it's a class of a point. So so it has a degree 1. So this is a class of a point, but the point is not unique. And finally, the class it will determine here it is unique, such that the cycle, the modified diagonal gamma 3 of S OX, OS, is 0. And now it is in actually modulo rational equivalence. So in fact, more concretely, this OS, for this you take the class of any point lying on a K3 surface, sorry, on a rational curve. Okay. So a projective K3 surface contains countably many rational curves. So of course, usually they are singular rational curves. They are obtained from general curves in S by imposing more and more nodes, more and more singularities until you get genus 0. Okay. So you see that in the case of a K3 surface, we get exactly in modulo rational equivalence the vanishing that we got in cohomology, and in some sense it's similar to the statement of Gross shown for hyperelliptic curves. So this makes K3 surfaces very special because this implies this has some consequences. So there are two formal consequences of this vanishing. If you take any two curves C prime in S, then the intersection C dot C prime, which is a zero cycle in S, it has to be proportional to this cycle OS in CH0 of S. This is surprising because this group CH0 of S, we know it is enormous. It follows from the result of the main theorem of Mumford. This is because these surfaces have holomorphic two forms, and that implies that the CH0 group is very big. And so intersecting any two divisors gets a zero cycle proportional to this canonically defined zero cycle. And the other consequence is that you get also from this vanishing is that if you consider the C2 of your surface, so it's a Chow theoretic C2. Okay? So by definition, it's a C2 of the conormal tangent bundle or cotangent bundle. It's the same. So it's a algebraic or holomorphic vector bundle on S. So it has its Chern classes in the Chow theory are well defined. And C2 of S, it's also proportional to this cycle. And of course, the coefficient of proportionality has to be the Euler-Poincaré characteristic. Okay. And so these properties are very special. It's quite easy to construct surfaces not satisfying these conditions. And to conclude, I would like to state a conjecture by O'Grady. Which which is based on the idea that everything which is true for K3 surfaces should be true as well for hyperkähler varieties. So it was, I think it was something maybe, because it is quite recent. So let X be a smooth projective hyperkähler manifold. So variety maybe. Of a dimension 2n, of course, hyperkähler, the complex dimension has to be even. Then there exists zero cycle. Okay, canonical of degree 1, satisfying the condition that gamma 2n plus 1 of x OX is 0 in CH x2n plus 1. This is optimal in the sense that we have this vanishing in cohomology, and the question is whether it is satisfied modulo rational equivalent. So hyperkähler, it's a higher dimensional generalization of K3 surfaces. In fact, that means that they are projective, or maybe compact Kähler varieties, with, let's assume X simply connected for simplicity. And the condition that, which is the analog of the condition for defining K3 surfaces, is that there exists holomorphic 2 form, which is everywhere non-degenerate. So this is, and this conjecture for the typical examples. When you consider the so-called Hilbert scheme of punctual Hilbert scheme of a K3 surface, that is that parameterize zero-dimensional subschemes of length n. It's a compactification of the symmetric product of nth symmetric product of S. And then for this, the conjecture is okay. So I prove that. Okay, so I prove this basically by using the reduction to the K3 case and the number of ingredients which allow to understand the motive of this X in terms of the motifs of the usual self-product of X, of S. So plus a number of ingredients which are rather classical. So I stop now.